Alright, and welcome back. So I'm going to start out by doing the wings of the TIE Fighter. And starting out here, I'm just going to remove them from the sprues. And I've gone and I've cleaned up the edges where the sprues were attached and made it nice and smooth so that nothing can be seen there. And then I got the frames of the wings that I need to remove from the sprues. And same thing, I've gone along the edges and shaved them down and cleaned up the sprue points, as you can see right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put a coat of primer over everything. And now I've got the primer on the wings. So I'm going to start out by painting just the outer edges of the wing with the gray that I'm going to be painting the entire body with. And I'll be using the Tamiya TS32 Haze Gray, which is fairly close to the original gray used. So you can see here I sprayed just around the outer edges, and I'm taped off the edges here, and I'm going to spray the rest of the wings black, and then this tape will be removed afterwards, and I'll peel it off and you'll see the gray, and it'll match the gray of the frames here. So I've got my coat of flat black sprayed onto the wings here, and then I'll just remove the tape. And you can see there how I have the gray on the edges. And when this frame is put over, it's nice and clean and neat, the black, and you can see the gray on the outer edge there. So now with all these frames here, they've already been primed. I'm going to do a quick black wash over this area here first to kind of pre-shade the areas. So I've done that now, done a black wash trying to highlight all these areas here. And now I've given them a coat of the TS32 Haze Gray, and you can see some of the shadowing there from the black wash is already making it pop and stand out. Then it's just time to go ahead and glue the frames to the wings. And they'll be glued in place, and they will look like that. And here I've got both of my wings glued, painted, and I'll do a little more detailing at another point. So now I'm going to start out by working on the pilot for my TIE Fighter, removing him from the sprue. I got him sitting right here. And nice detail for the little pilot. And again, I've started out by giving him a coat of gray primer, Tamiya gray primer. And I'm using my photo reference from a book I have, and here's the TIE Fighter pilot and a closer shot of the helmet. And I've gone ahead and I've spray painted them flat black, as you can see here. And it's a little too difficult to show the fine detail painting, but I've painted them now, and you can see the little buttons on his chest plate and everything has been painted. His gloves are slight gloss, boots slight gloss, and his helmet is now glossy. So then we've got these decals here that go on the side of the helmet and on his shoulders, and this little one that goes on the front of the helmet. And now I've gone ahead and I've applied the decals to him as well, as you can see here. And I also did a slight dry brush of some dark gray over him just to kind of pick up some of the highlights. So now we're moving on to the cockpit, and I'm going to remove all the cockpit pieces here from the sprue. So here we've got the back of the seat for the cockpit, which goes right here. Then we have this portion that holds the controls to fly the TIE fighter. We have these little armrests that attach to the back of the chair, like so. And then we have the back wall of the cockpit, which just fastens to the floor right here, just like that. So I've gone ahead and I've glued these pieces all together, and this is the control which attaches here, which I will attach at a later point. And here's how the pilot looks sitting in the seat. So here we have the two side walls for the cockpit interior, which I'm removing from the sprues. And the way the kit works, normally these two side walls would just attach to either side like so. So I've gone and I've sprayed the interior cockpit with gray primer, and I actually like this color. It's a good color for the inside, so I'm just going to leave it with the primer. So the bottom portion here I'm going to need to remove because I'm going to need areas to run my wires for my lights, and you can see here how it will leave me no room whatsoever. So I'm going to remove that to make an area for the wires to run through. So I've gone ahead and I've cut that bottom portion off, and now I need to remove some sides here so that I can run my EL panel around the cockpit to illuminate it. So I've gone ahead and I've cut that, and yes, it's not perfect, but it won't be seen. So now what I'm going to do is a quick dark gray wash over the entire cockpit floor and seat and a little bit on the back wall. So these two side walls here I will not be using because I'm going to be lighting up the cockpit, and I'll be using these photo-etched cockpit pieces here. So the first thing I need to do is remove these pieces from the photo etch. So I've got all four of my pieces here, and they need to be bent into shape to match the contour of the sidewalls of the kit. So I'm just kind of using this as a guide here, and I'm just going to lightly bend each panel at those bend points until I have what you see here, and it's the same angle as the plastic kit wall. And I've got all four of my photo etch pieces here bent in the proper shape. So then what I need to do is glue it all together. So I'm using a little bit of tape on either end to hold them in place, and then I'm just going to run some super glue on the points and then run it down the seams. And I've done it to all four here now, and you can see it's all held together. And now I've removed the tape and I've super glued the ends, and I have a solid sidewall piece here. So I've now just given the sidewall a coat of gray primer, and then I've gone and I've given it a coat of flat black, and you can see how the light comes through from the white behind it. So I've done it to both sidewalls now. Both are painted and ready to be installed into the cockpit. And look what showed up in the mail today. My EL panel. So it's really flexible, kind of like a thick construction paper, I would say is about the thickness of it. And quick little plug in here, and boom, lights up, and it's completely flexible and bendable, and can be cut as well into any shape you want. But it will just wrap around the cockpit like so and illuminate the photo etch and light up the inside, and I'll be cutting it right about here. And here you can just kind of see what the EL panel will look like glowing through the sidewalls of the photo etch. So now that I have all the cockpit pieces in my photo etch, I'm going to take the two sidewalls and glue them into position onto the floor of the cockpit. So they'll be glued right into this area here. But first I'm going to need to remove the portion on the side here for the connector of the EL panel so that it can go underneath and run out the tube that's going to hold the TIE fighter. And you can see here the connector, why I need to cut away the side so that can go underneath. But I'll also be trimming the connector so it's not quite as thick. And that'll just go under there like so. So I got to remove that side, and I'm going to remove the other side also. So I've cut both of the sides off of this. So again, the sidewall is going to go right over here on the edge, and you can see now how there's room behind there for my connector to run through for the EL panel. So I've put the cockpit in here, and you can see how there's room for the EL to wrap around behind the back, and then under here is where I have wires that can run through for the engines. And then I got the sides cut here where I can run the connector for the EL panel. So I've taped the cockpit into position here, and I'm using this as a guide to glue my wall into position so that it will be in the right place. And now I have both sidewalls glued and drying. So I'm going to go ahead now and glue my pilot into position into the seat here. Carefully so that I don't hit my photo etch sidewalls. And then glue the controls into position for the pilot. So now that we have that done, it's time for a quick little teaser test of the EL panel. And there you can see how it's basically going to look inside the cockpit once it's fully lit. So I'm going to be leaving the video with this. In my next video I'll be covering probably doing the engines and laser lighting and getting the insides put together. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one.